Greetings, welcome along. It is Inspire and Be Inspired, weekly motivational conversation. Today we are going to be having another music-packed chat, and I am speaking to a gentleman that I've got to know very well over the last 20 years or so. I'll bring him straight onto the stream now. Mr. Blackwax, how are you, sir? You okay?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. So I know you are a big fan of these conversations, so you'll know exactly what we're going to be doing. We are going to be finding out all about your history. I'm sure there's going to be lots of gaps that we'll try and fill in here and there. You have said already that your memory isn't the best, so we're not going to be too in depth. Now, as we are talking, I can see on here that my camera angle is ever so slightly over to the right, so bear with me 1 second because I want to make this a little bit better. You and I are both you're perfect. You and I are both way too good looking to have any of us cropped. So we are live on YouTube, but we are earlier than normal, so I have a feeling it's just going to be you or I chatting for a little bit. Okay then. Mr. Steve Reed, aka Blackwax. I'm going to jump halfway into the journey and ask you, because I was thinking about this earlier. Do you recall where you and I first crossed paths? I believe it might have been on the Southport Weekender message board.
Southport Weekenders message board and Deep House page.
Okay.
That was where we got to know each other virtually.
Okay, and then how did you then? So I'm assuming you would have found your way over to Pressure then, maybe?
No, actually. That's a good point. I know where we first met in person. I can't recall if that was previous to me coming on Pressure or not.
So where did we meet in person then?
Matter in London. I think you were playing with Louis Vega, Little Louis maybe.
Okay, yeah, Little Louis. And yeah, so that would have
maybe
been
India.
That would have been a Soul Heaven party with India performing live. Okay, so let's roll back. Good evening, Andy Tummo. Good evening, Gary Langford. Good evening, Andrea. Everyone else that is passing through, thank you for being here. I always say the same thing. Feel free to leave any comments, especially people watching the recording. If there's anything that resonates with you, then do let Steve know. Right, okay, so Steve Reed and myself have so many things in common. We were born in the same year. We got married in the same year. There's a lot more things that have just gone clean out of my head now. There are a lot of similarities. So, and Schooley joins us as well. Good evening, sir. Rapidly finishing what he was doing and getting involved. So it's going to be a nice little cozy conversation between us all. Okay, I'll shut up. Take me back to where you feel Steve Reed became relevant.
Last Wednesday.
Yeah, tell us about your early years. So I know you were born 1970. Always from Cambridgeshire?
Always Cambridge born and bred. Never moved very far afield. Little stints out towards Norfolk for short whiles, but yeah, Cambridge born and bred. Lived in most parts of the city. I've got one brother. I grew up about 100 yards from Cambridge United football ground. Up until my early teenage years, then I moved to another part of the city. So I had friends on one side of the city where I was living, and I went to school on completely the other side of the city. So I had a good connection with both sides, which meant I grew up knowing a lot of people outside of just my school friends.
Okay, so Cambridge, I'm not really that clued up on Cambridge itself. Is it, apart from the university, obviously very famous, is it an affluent town, right?
Yeah. I mean,
is it a town?
City. Yes. It's fairly affluent, obviously, because of the universities. It's got its rough parts, but not rough like an inner city.
Okay, and so you didn't walk around with a cravat on and smoking a pipe from like 6 years of age?
About 4.5, I think it was.
Were you from good stock? Your family have dough, or was it a tough
No,
upbringing?
not really. Council estate, pretty much all my life.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides of the town that I lived in were the kind of poor council estate areas. Certainly don't come from money.
Okay. So give us the your first recollection of where music played a big part in your life, where you can, distinctly remember.
Multifaceted, really. I mean, my mum always had a radio on in the kitchen. Always. She very rarely had the television on. So, like most of us our age, I grew up listening to the radio and doing pause tapes, etc. But actually, very, very early on, I was looking for extra work and became a glass collector in several bars in the city. And at the time, those bars had DJs. So even before I started DJing, it was kind of a fascination for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, one night, one of the DJs didn't turn up. They knew I kind of had been watching and knew my way around the equipment a little bit because I'd been practicing sort of before they opened, and was offered a DJing gig.
Okay, well let's find out about how you found your direction, your passion in the music, because you would have been switched on to certain types of music, black music definitely. How did that come about?
Again, several different ways, really. Some of my friends that I grew up with were West Indian. They introduced me to blues parties, mostly in houses. There was a couple. One particular stands out in my mind called the New Street Blues. It was actually up a spiral metal staircase at a taxi rank. But they used to play reggae and rare groove and stuff. But also very early on, I met a guy called Max Reese who had a record shop called Hot Numbers Records, and I spent a lot of time in that place. And he was extremely instrumental in forming my musical taste, but also introducing me to things like the Southport Weekender, the Essex Soul All Dayer scene. I drove him around for many, many years. Huge influence on my musical taste.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So we say hi to Tommy White joining us from Iceland, and Emily joins us all the way from sunnier climes, burnt to a crisp. She says, "Good evening, eating a pulled pork bap." Lovely. How the other half live. Okay, so you've painted the picture of how you got into that scene and some of your earlier influences. So getting behind the decks then, what was the emotions? How did it feel for you? Because being a DJ back then was a completely different.
Well, it was, but it's something I wanted to do, and mostly because one of the first DJs. I come from the soul scene. DJs played 7 inches and talked on the microphone between records. The thing that changed that for me is when hip hop started first coming through, and there was a guy that used to do block parties in Cambridge. Most people will know his name, DJ Harvey.
Uh-huh.
So I ended up knocking around with when hip hop came around. I bought the Subway art book, massive influence on me, and started doing a bit of graffiti. And I met a guy called Chocky. And Chocky was part of the Tonka sound system with DJ Harvey, but he was also a big graffiti writer. Went on to run Chocky's tunes in London. Watching Harvey play at block parties and street parties, mixing up hip hop and very early house and rare groove and everything in between, really made me want to be a DJ. So when the opportunity came along to be around the equipment and be able to touch it and actually get it offered a job, the seed was already there.
Okay, interesting. So I didn't realise how tight you were with those guys back then.
If I ran into Harvey now, I'm not even sure he'd recognise me.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's a long time ago.
So this has got to be 80. Are we talking 87, 88, or a little bit later?
85, 86.
Okay. Right. Oh, so that early, so literally still around the beginning of like the hip hop scene.
Well, when I first started DJing in the bar, I wasn't actually old enough to be in there. Okay. I couldn't work behind the bar as such. I was a glass collector. So yeah,
how were you able to be in there legally then? If you weren't able to be in there legally,
if you're a glass collector, at that time you could be under 18 and be in there as long as you weren't drinking or serving alcohol.
I didn't realise that. I thought you actually had to be 18. Okay, well, I just said around the birth of hip hop in the week that they're celebrating 50 years, and we had a nice conversation about that at the weekend, a debate as to what is correct and whatever. But for us, really, it was 83, 84, 85, wasn't it? The beginnings. Okay, so Chucky, I got to know much later on in the house days. So was Tonka going so early on, mid-80s?
I'm not sure. I can't recall if they were even called Tonka back then. I have a feeling they weren't. I think that was formed as a collective slightly after. I wasn't particularly tight with those guys. I just used to run into Chucky a lot because of the graffiti thing.
Okay. So what was your speciality with regards to, I used to knock around with a lot of graffiti artists. I don't know all the terminology, but some people were better at tagging. Some people had specific styles of the graph that they used to do. What was yours?
I always wanted to do the wild style, but I could never get my head around that. Tagging wasn't really my thing. I wanted to do full pieces, but they were very kind of block style, and normally only maybe 2-3 colours max.
And characters? Did you have like a signature character? No.
I never got that good, Andy.
Okay. What about the book, the sketchbook? Constantly being a creative person. Yeah. That would have been something that you did a lot.
Yeah. I had multiple sketchbooks. Yeah, I spent hours doing that while listening to music with my friends.
And you talk about friends. Were you a good lad? Did you bring trouble to the door?
Do I have to answer that?
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't the best behaved.
Why?
I mean, put it this way: when I moved to Chesterton, the two guys that I used to knock around with, who we used to do graffiti with, over the back of one of their houses was a train yard. So we regularly used to go through his backyard over the fence and spray up trains. My graffiti name was actually Chase, because I used to get chased by the police or security all the time. But I could run back then. Not so much.
Wow. So I say good evening or good afternoon to Front Back House. Gone completely out of my head who that is, so please remind me. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so on the railway tracks, smashing the windows, bricking, air rifles, all those kind of things. Yeah.
Black Widow catapult.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, Pugwash is with us as well. He says good afternoon. All right, so where do we go with this conversation? Is there a pivotal moment that changes along the way, or as you say, you get asked?
I guess going to the first few Southport Weekenders.
Okay.
So Max Reese used to have his shop in Cambridge. He used to have a record stall at Southport, and at the original Southport venue, it was the first thing you saw when you walked through the main entrance. It was big. First one he took me to was number 8, and I worked on that stall consistently for a good 10 or 15 years.
That was just on the edge of the arcade, right?
Yes, to the left, if I remember rightly. It was literally as you walked in the front door, where they had the big timetable thing. Eventually, it was there.
Okay, so you were working there, just helping him sell the. So I can't, even though I was trying to picture it. Did he also sell the merchandise, or was that someone separate who sold the tees?
That was Terry T-shirt. I think he was off to the left-hand side.
Terry T-shirt. What did he do? We had a great conversation last week with Dave Lynn, and we were talking about some of the characters that would have been responsible for selling the merch at all of the at the events. So Danny Front Back House, he says, Steve, I'm ashamed to know you. And Sai Grazia down on the south coast says, it sounds like a familiar youth to most of us. Well, it does indeed, most definitely. The same rites of passage. Okay, so Southport.
The mad thing about working on that record stall, it was a hub. Max was very, very well known. I think at the time he was also DJing at Southport, but it was a gathering point. So I got introduced to a lot of people through those years. Mark Webster, Snowboy, Sean French, all those guys used to hang out at the record store a huge amount. I think it's how I first met Bob Jones as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and did you take pride slowly as your knowledge of the music expanded, and I guess you would have been taken under the wing and given access to new artists and stuff, or were you quite prolific as time went on in scratching the surface and digging deeper yourself anyway?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of both, really. There's lots of people that turn me on to a lot of good music and still continue to do so to this day. But obviously look for my own stuff as well. And obviously back then with records, you read the sleeve notes, you looked at producers and arrangers and labels and tried to find other stuff from those people.
So I'm assuming House was on the outskirts, but you were definitely more based on
I bought a lot of early Chicago tracks house records while I was still very immersed in the soul scene. But I wasn't really fully immersed in the house scene. Although I was buying the music and I liked it, I didn't really get to play it out anywhere. And I certainly missed a lot of the very well-known, influential early house music lights. I never went to the Ministry of Sound in the early 90s. I never went to Miami Winter Music Conference. The list goes on and on. I was very, very much, as a punter, immersed in the whole soul scene.
Okay, so Southport was every 6 months. Give me some ideas of things in between that you would have been going to, and your DJs that you looked up to and idolized, I guess, in your early 20s.
Bob Jones, definitely. His nights at the Blue Note in Hoxton Square. Terry Jones at Norfolk Village. Multiple different soul all-dayers. The Bull in Royston with Bob Cosby, Gavin Page, which was really interesting because David Lynn talked about those in his last interview. And forgive me, David, we've met a few times, but I don't ever remember sitting down and breaking bread with him, which is surprising because listening to the interview, we were in the same places with the same people so many times.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know, unfortunately, Dave will be on air at the moment, but he will come and check out this recording. So I'm sure we'll get in touch, and it's a conversation over a beer at some point. Okay, so those heavily every week out and about on the scene.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, as I said, I ended up doing a lot of driving for Max Reese, so we were going up and down the country, from up north, Manchester, Liverpool, to down south, places like Bump and Hustle when they were at the old Joe Bar on the pier, etc. A lot of things in London.
Mm-hmm. So you are what age here, roughly? Mid-20s?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, so obviously you'd met Amanda at this point. And you were married?
We got married in 98, same as you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that. I know, ridiculous. So, out and about, I had an in-depth conversation with Amanda, not on video, but on an audio podcast a few years ago, telling us about the early years. So part of your story came into that, but also, and you guys were partying together. So let's take it from your own perspective. Were you partying together, or were you out and about on your own and then going back to her?
A bit of both. I mean, Amanda came from a very music-orientated background anyway. Her first husband was actually a doorman at Caister. So she used to go to Caister quite regularly. She actually went to the Wigan Casino. She used to go to St Ivo Northern Soul all-nighters. So, music was a big thing for her. Obviously, she had kids and stuff at home, so she didn't always feel inclined to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
kind of work. I mean, I would at the time, because I was known as the driver. I was always the designated driver. I didn't drink much back then, so I could go out for a night out, have 2 bottles of water, and then drive back home again. So it was rare that I was away for an entire night or 24 hours, etc.
Okay, so designated driver, collecting your music at this point. Is your collection growing healthily? Were you making a conscious? You were making a conscious effort to grow your collection.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. From a financial point of view, or just because it was the bug?
Oh, it's a bug. It was a bug. If I did it for a financial point of view, I wouldn't have done it, because it, quite often you choose a pile of records over your lunch or your dinner, or it can get quite obsessive at points.
Yeah, same old story again that a lot of people have said. So where do you get a break and kind of make waves so that all of a sudden people are talking about you being the DJ now?
I don't really know, mate. I don't ever think, even though they probably do now, I've never thought of myself in that way. I guess really the gigs that I look back to the most of being very proud of, and probably making me more well known, was something called Grand Central at the Junction in Cambridge. So that was a 2-room event. We had people like Joe Negro, Camacho, Byron Stingley, Brian Tappet, all sorts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is mid-90s?
Late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
So I've done a lot in between those, but was ever known as a DJ as such? Possibly not. People knew who I was because of who I was associated with. Mm-hmm. But some of those guys, especially locally, still don't really even book me now, despite everything that I've done and everything that I've achieved. That's a whole story.
Okay, so tell us about how you continuing to collect music, running a record store. What part of the timeline does that fall into? That's where you are full time managing the shop.
So I actually worked in Max's shop for a little while. I then went on to work for an independent chain called Andy's Records for many years. I actually ended up as an assistant manager and a manager of 2 different branches of that. And then the guys that were doing Grand Central decided they wanted to open a record shop, and they asked me to come in and run it for them, because they know I'd been in that industry for many years previous. So it was never my record shop. I was just the face, the front man, and ran it on a day-to-day basis. But I was there from original concept. Blackwax Records was the name that I came up with. I was there, paintbrush in hand, helping deck it all out, etc. And at that time, this was pre-MySpace, pre-Facebook, etc. I signed up to a lot of forums under the name Blackwax, hence why DJ Blackwax, because after the record shop closed, everybody knew me as Blackwax, the guy from Blackwax Record. Okay,
so how long did you enjoy happy days at the record store, and why did it decline?
Record shop was only open for 3.5 years, I think, if I recall rightly. So not long in the greater schemes. When we first opened, there was 4 record shops on that street. There's none now. Okay. It was right on the cusp of things like Traxsource starting. We had a few distributors that went down on us, owed us a bit of money, etc.
Lucky you. Sorry, I'm being childish.
We I've just got that. Weirdly enough, I kind of saw the MP3 online digital thing coming, and I tried my best to persuade them that, we should really approach some labels and distributors and stuff. We had a website already. We were selling physical online. I said it wouldn't do too much to be able to start selling digital copies. And they were massively anti that idea, which was a shame. but I understood it and I respected it. You know, as we've got an app designer and I managed to get some people on board, things may have been a completely different ballgame now. And it was literally about 2 weeks after that conversation that kind of TrackSource launched, and the rest is history.
Well, that would have been
changed.
That would have been 2002, 2003, because I can remember the timeline of that happening. My own label, we were one of the first physical labels to have our catalogue on there for Clean Cut Records. So it was back end of 2001, definitely 2002.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And then 2003 onwards. I am being asked by Tommy White, when did you start producing? But I have a feeling that's much later in the conversation, right?
That was after the record shop closed. Having worked in record shops for a long, long time, having the DJing work kind of dried up a little bit. I wasn't working in the record shop. I wasn't around music all day. For me, producing was really a way of keeping my hand in on music and having an outlet for my creativity. Nothing more than that. I never ever intended on releasing a piece of music ever.
Okay. So how did you begin? All self-taught, or were you working with an engineer?
No, completely self-taught.
Okay. And some of your earliest efforts, do you look back at them and through your fingers, or are you happy with your early productions?
Constantly. There's very, very little out of my entire catalogue that I can look back on now and just go, yeah, that was really good. It's not really fair to beat yourself up like that, though, is it? I mean, that night at Matter, you were the first person that played one of my earliest releases, in a club that I'd heard. So you obviously heard something there. Phil Asher dropped one of my tracks in the Powerhouse at Southport Weekender, which was a huge moment for me, especially when Ben Brophy came round and I went, Steve, what's this track? I was like, shut up, give me a minute, I'll be over in a second.
Oh, I'm all emotional.
You guys obviously heard something that I didn't, maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Well, I've been busy cleaning my studio this week, and I've cleaned away my notebook and pencil. I had meant to make a note when we opened up this conversation by introducing you as one of my favourite DJs, one of the hottest go-to DJs that I would always ask for, and also some of your productions I've really loved. And I'm not, everyone knows I am not somebody to blow smoke up anyone's ass. So I think you are a little bit harsh on yourself. Yes,
yeah, maybe.
Early productions can be useless. I'll be the first to admit that many of mine are, but they are very important to document our journey. And
you know what? I'm going to big you up now, Andy. Back when I first started, there was very, very few people that I would send my tracks to. You were one of maybe 3 or 4. And you always gave me constructive criticism.
It wasn't always good, was it?
but that's what I needed. There's nothing worse than sending something to somebody that needs improving, and you just want that extra pair of ears, and they blow a huge amount of smoke up your ass, telling you it's the best thing ever, when you know damn well it's not. Those people didn't get sent music ever again. Uh-huh. But those people that gave me good constructive feedback continued.
Well, it's a crazy coincidence the way this conversation has taken a turn, because as we have these words, the brother C joins us, and he's someone who will definitely relate to everything that you've just said, because Charles also has had the truth from me from time to time about some of his productions. And again, another DJ who I hold in high esteem, and a great producer as well, when he gets his finger out of his ass and gets around to it, that is. Okay, so I
will also just say there was 2 other people that were extremely helpful in my production journey. Sean McCabe, mm-hmm. He actually sent me my first ever keyboard in the post, out the goodness of his heart. Nice. He really encouraged me, and Phil Asher. Again, he sent me a hang on though. Phil sent me my first keyboard. Sean sent me my second one. The one that Phil sent me was one of those little Oxygen 8s. It was literally 1-octave keyboard, which was great for what I needed at the time. And then I had a conversation with Sean, and he sent me a much bigger one.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. John Rogers. How are you? So you mentioned Phil. His name has cropped up once or twice through all of the conversations that we have, because how can it not be such an important part of the UK music scene as time progressed, as we moved forward together with Vocal Booth, amongst many other things. You and Phil became quite close, quite friendly, and definitely a huge mentor for many of us, even when he wasn't aware of it, right?
Did I tell you how me and Phil met?
Possibly, but I don't know.
This story still black. This is Phil all over. Phone rings at home, my landline. Is that Steve? Yeah. It's Phil Asher. Fuck off. No, it's not. And I put the phone down. Phone straight back. Steve, it really is. It's Phil Asher. I was like, yeah, okay, what do you want? I got your number off somebody. I've been watching you for a little while. I thought it'd be really, really nice to hook up. 2 days later, I'm around his house having chicken dinner with his wife at his table, and I'm in his studio. I mean, that's Phil.
Amazing. Incredible. An incredible man. Definitely worth remembering today and putting a smile on our face. Good evening, Carol. Good evening, Dad Z as well, all passing through. We are 30 minutes into this conversation, chewing the fat. We've spoken about Steve's early years. We've moved into the millennium. By this point, our paths would have crossed, me DJing for Soul Heaven, and then Pressure Radio, the chat room. There's a few years before we began the Vocal Booth Weekender in 2009 that you came along to. Can you think of anything that would have happened in between 2003 and 2009?
No.
None of us can. None of us can.
I'm sure I did lots. But yeah, nothing instantly springs to mind. That's weird. How can you lose that much time?
Right. Okay. So, and in all of this timeline, your relationship with Amanda continued. Obviously, Amanda, you'd already said had children from a previous relationships, and so the family was growing. And by this time, Amanda had started coming back out again, partying now.
Yeah.
So, 2009, then. We decided to throw a little party here in Spain called the Vocal Booth Weekender. And I mention this because in all of the conversations that I have, I'm very hesitant to talk about it too much. But over the course of the last 15 years, it's been a huge part of your life, I believe. I think you'd be the first to admit, right?
Hang on a minute. I've missed out that time period. So when the record shop was open, I was going over to New York a lot.
Okay, well, come on, mate. Where's your notes? Where's your notes?
I clearly didn't do it. Yes, obviously because of the record shop, and the fact that I become online friends with a lot of people in New York and Chicago. I was going out there regularly. 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a year. Mostly, really, to sort of go and meet labels and distributors and pick up on what was hot there and bring as much of it back to the shop as I could. It's through Deep House Page and those trips to New York that I met people like Jihad Mohammed and Camacho.
Carl Dupree was quite a good friend at the time. Right?
I wasn't really close to Carl, but I knew Mark Mendoza quite well. When they had the Future Soul record label, I went to their launch night party. That was filled with who's who of New York and New Jersey. That was a special night. That was
So this is mid-2000s, more or less.
Yeah. Camacho actually got me over and asked me to play a few gigs out there. So I did Barry B's Elevation Party, which was a bit of a disaster because I was second track in. I looked down on the floor and went, why is the floor all wet? By the third track, it was that deep. It was in a basement and it flooded. So they quickly carted me off and said, we think we can get you on another gig. And I went to a warehouse party with Weirdly enough, although I think it was in Brooklyn, it was with DJ Pope, OG, and Carolyn Victorian from Baltimore. And it was run by a guy called Carlton Rosebud, who used to do all the stick headphones.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up playing at that at a place called Frank's Lounge, which is where I met people like Julian Bevan, DJ 138, Timmy Richardson, and also through Deep House Page I met Jamie 326. So on one of my trips out to New York, he said, come over to Chicago and play while you're there. It's a short flight, just jump on a plane. So I did. Ended up playing at a place called the Note. It's not there anymore. And it was Thanksgiving Eve, which is like New Year's Eve here. And I got to this club and I was first on, and there was literally a queue 2 blocks long. I shit myself. So that was me, a guy called M-Trax, Jamie 326, and Farley Jack Master Funk.
Do you feel you gave a good representation of yourself that evening?
No, not at all. No.
Why?
I went to absolute pieces.
Why? Music select. So first of all, music selection. Was that okay? You were just shit technically.
I was playing vinyl, and I literally just played the records that I'd bought that day.
Okay, well, that's never a good thing. Never a good thing to do.
But you know what? I'm extremely proud that I did it, and that I can say that I played along such legends in their hometown to their home crew. You know, how many people get asked to go and do something like that?
Not many.
Extremely proud moment for me. And then me and Jamie still speak every time we see each other. You know, we hark back to those times. I was at Jamie's first gig that he ever did in London for Raoul from Love Vinyl and part of the Faith Crew, etc. Really nice guy. Went through some troubles himself, went off the rails, has pulled himself back, and top man. We'll always have a lot of time for him.
Enjoying a huge resurgence at the moment. Well, the last couple of years, actually.
Because he's a great DJ, and he's got an incredible pedigree, but 2, he's just a genuinely proper, nice bloke. Big up, Jamie.
Big up,
my Candle brother.
Big up, Jamie, indeed. Danny, Front Back House, is saying he remembers when you had Jamie 326 down in Hackney. Was it Hackney? With a question mark?
Yeah, it might have been Hackney. I can't remember the venue. I do remember going to the after party and getting horribly messed up and having to leave.
That doesn't sound like you. So promotions, did you actually venture into promote? I know you work side by side with some promoters sometimes, but did you ever go?
Never did much myself. I did a soul night late 90s, place called Munro's. Again, I think I had Gavin Page, Bob Jones, Fred Dove, who wasn't particularly known as a DJ, but he was an A&R guy. Schoolie about to tell you who he A&R'd for. Fred Dove. Did that for a few years. It was only in a small bar. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Okay, so you mentioned about the coming back to the soul, which I'm glad that you did, because while you were talking about your trip to the States, I was going to ask you, did you turn your back on soul completely at that point when the mid 2000s, when you were fully into the house, or you still buying on the side as well?
Yeah, still buying on the side, but I just expanded. I mean, I never, despite my earliest influences being more from the hip hop side of things with the block parties and stuff, I never really was a big hip hop collector. The soul and the breaks thing was more what I gravitated towards as a collector, but I also branched out into things like disco, as well as early house stuff.
Okay, so
my musical taste, it's very broad and wide and
very varied and very respected. In the write-up, I do say you are widely regarded as a music connoisseur. You do have maybe you disagree when I say an encyclopedic knowledge of music, but you definitely know your artists. You definitely know, tracks, samples regularly on the radio show. You'll be the first person to spot a sample and tell us where it comes from originally. Was that always a conscious effort to do that?
No, I don't think it was a conscious effort. I think it's just years and years of being a music fan and fully delving myself into that world. I can't recall stuff like I used to be able to.
Mm-hmm. You physically feel that is not becoming an issue, but sometimes you think, wow, where's that guy?
Yeah, and there would have been a time when it had been like that, but yeah, no longer. But hey ho.
Hey ho. That'll come with the grey hair and the less of the hair. No ponytail anymore.
No, don't you dare.
Actually, here's one up of
there's very few photos of me with my hair down here. Yeah, again, I did obviously was around the rave scene as well. I always gravitated towards the smaller sort of back rooms, the kind of more Balearic or whatever you want to call it sounds, rather than the full-on rave music. So, but the fashion was of it at a time. I never had curtains, but I did have a ponytail down to right down my back for a long, long time, about 10 or 11 years. In fact, when I got married in 98, my hair was still shoulder length, and I'd actually just got it cut for the wedding.
Oh, here's a photo we've got from earlier. No. Okay, so we're bouncing around now, going back to the rave scene. So, anything else you want to throw in there that's just come into that broken mind of yours?
There's been so many moments. I mean, DJing at a bomb shelter in Leeds Airport with Camacho and Phil Houghton, that was a bit of a moment. Mm-hmm. Literally next to the runway. Crazy.
I remember that. Big up to Phil, pushing that hard at the time.
Yeah. So many little moments like that. We could be here for hours trying to recall them all. But
okay, so let's talk then about that first vocal booth in Spain in 2009. A little party that we thought we were going to put on, bringing everyone together from another of the chat rooms that you started to frequent, and it would change all of our lives, really, wouldn't it? It sounds quite deep to say that out loud, but it is the truth. No, right?
Well, it did. It did. I mean, it pretty much changed my entire social circle.
Were you quite active DJing before that first vocal booth weekender?
It's always gone in fits and spurts with me, Andy. I'll have 6 or 7 months of doing two gigs every weekend in and out, and then I'll have 6 months of absolutely nothing. This year, for instance, been extremely quiet, and yet the year before was manic.
Well, we'll get to talk about that. So remind me, in 2009, ashamedly, I can't remember. Did you play at that first one?
Yeah.
Okay, so you did play at the first one. I do know that I wasn't putting you on to play house then, was I? You were playing a lot more eclectic music across the spectrum.
I played house on the first one. And I distinctly remember that because as Phil Asher walked in the door, I was playing one of his tracks and he took one look at me and walked straight back out again. It's funny the things you remember, isn't it?
Where was it? Where did you play the first one? In the club or at the?
Was it in the club? Yeah, it would have been in the club.
Well, we did the club and the restaurants on the water. Was that it? There wasn't any other parties, was there?
It would have been the club then.
Yeah. I don't know. So many. They all blur into one. So we won't focus too much on vocal booth, but you mentioned what is important about your social circle changed, and then that would have changed the whole energy of going out and gigs that you would have got and production ramping up and so on and so forth. So talk us through the next few years then.
Oh wow, it's yeah, I mean, what a game changer to meet so many other like-minded people that you felt that you should have known for decades previous, but didn't. Yeah, great. I mean, one of the maddest moments for me was Ben when Bob Povey and John Coomer came to Vocal Booth. Went, who's this guy? We need to get him on. And at the time, they didn't realise that I used to go to their gigs as an 18-year-old with Max Reese, driving him when he used to play there when it was at the old show bar. So for them to ask me to come and play was a big moment. And then to become resident. I mean, their last residents were Simon Dunmore and ATFC. It still doesn't really compute with me now.
Mm-hmm.
So many moments like that, and so many people I've met and friendships formed. Some people from Vocal Booth I speak to, week in, week out.
Very, very, very important indeed. And then as time progressed, things would have changed. We continue to enjoy great times at the Monte Piedra. So what is the next point within the journey that you feel is important? Is it the production ramping up a little bit more? Is it you getting to spin out a lot more, as you say?
I'd still like to play out more. I'm still, even after all these years, slightly obsessed with it. I always say that when I'm DJing, that's my happy place. It always makes me laugh when someone says, "I've put you on first because I want you to enjoy the rest of the night." You don't know me at all, do you? I still live for DJing, especially if it's in front of a crowd of proper people.
Or what happens when the promoter puts you on first to set the scene for the evening, and then you play all the bangers and you get told off?
Who would do that?
Steve,
Who would do that?
I didn't think you were going to play like that, Steve. That's not what I thought. What year was that? 2014, 15, when you opened up in Zone.
Was it as early as that? But I do distinctly remember when I came over to Spain a few years later, you had it on in the car and you turned around to me and said, "It wasn't as bad as I made out."
Yeah, I can be a twat at times. Good evening, Angel. How are you? You're all right. Yeah, so you came over to Spain. I remember particularly you were going through a bit of a tough time, and I said, "Come on, mate, come and have a couple of days with us in Spain." That was quite a few years ago, right?
Again, exactly the right thing that I needed at exactly the right time. So thank you.
No problem at all.
We won't go into details of why, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there was nothing greater than watching you enjoy yourself, come home, lay on the sofa, sleeping and farting all afternoon. Wonderful. Fantastic. So I guess at some point we should talk about you hooking up with Sarah and the Brighter Days crew.
Yeah, man. Wow. What a ride we had for a very short few years. So Sarah moved to Cambridge, didn't know anyone, was wanting to go out to a few nights and was really struggling to find anything. She got to know a few local people and said, I'm thinking of putting on like a small one-off party. She met a very, very old friend of mine called Joe Wallace-Gordon, who promptly recommended me, introduced us. We went out for a coffee one night, the three of us, and got chatting and just clicked. And decided to put on a couple of parties. And 3 years later, we went from doing the back room of a pub with about 80 people to doing the junction with the likes of Michael Gray and Tony Humphreys and Joe Negro and Simon Dunmore. And yeah, wow, what a journey.
Mm-hmm. She's very much.
She's an incredible promoter. She's incredibly good at marketing. She has vision. It wasn't all plain sailing. I'm sure she won't mind me saying. We disagreed on certain elements like who to book and etc. But yeah, mm-hmm. absolutely amazing what we achieved.
Brighter Days, and it's mental, absolutely mental to think how long ago that was, relatively, right?
Last one was November 2019.
So it began back end of 2015.
Yeah.
Which was eight years ago, it sounds.
You know, we still speak. I went over and spent a week with Sarah earlier this year. She still gets me gigs. It's down to Sarah that I get to do the Ibiza street party 2 nights every year, which is an incredibly fun gig. Musically, it's a bit sort of Ibiza classics. I can't go in kind of real deep and obscure, but it's so fun to do. 3, 4, 5 hours from an empty street to full on frenzy in the middle of Pride Week in the old town outside. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
You were quite late on the Ibiza train, weren't you?
Oh God, yeah. The first time I went to Ibiza was with you when I pulled out the wrong USB and got sunstroke.
Not because of pulling out the wrong USB. 2014, I think that was, right?
Yeah,
possibly.
Yeah, again, you know, this is what I'm saying. I was late as a house music clubber. Yeah, I was aware of the music. I was buying the music. I like the music, but I wasn't immersed in the scene. So I missed out on going to Ibiza back in the day, just the same as I missed out on going to Ministry of Sound when it first opened.
I hear that, but you've had your moments of making up for lost time. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah. I think it might be time to slow down a little bit again, Andy.
Well, you never know. Time to speed up again, possibly. So productions, you've had some great moments. You did a wonderful remix for myself. Actually, it was I chose your version of the family track with Sophia Rabina as the official release. And tell us about the emotion attached to that for you, having it been the main release and then getting to see it performed at one of the most special places to you.
Oh, mate, you can see I'm well enough about that one already. Wow. Yeah, I mean, to see your version of a track, your remix of a track performed live, especially at that venue, and just watch it all pan out was I can't describe how that feels. That will stick with me forever. Again, I don't particularly like listening back to it now, the remix itself, but that memory will stay with me till I pass.
Special memories. I mean, it's been quite a strange couple of days associated to the Montepiedra for reasons that many people watching this will know, but it's difficult because of what that venue and what that event means to so many of us. It's hard to try and convey why things are so wrong at times, you know. I'm sorry to say cryptic if no one knows what I'm talking about, but it's not really anything that nothing that we need to dwell on.
I thought about commenting a few times on that one, Andy, but in the end, I just said there's nothing I can say.
So anyway, we'll move on. People will know what they want. I hate that saying. If you know, you know. But, it was just something because of the week that this conversation's fallen on.
Some things just don't need to be discussed in this way on this platform, do they?
Indeed. So we're talking about other productions. You have been producing it heavily not heavily, but you've had some great tracks in the studio. And this year you've got a track out with another gentleman you would have met at Vocal Booth, Mr. Todd Gardner. So we give a shout out to Todd, and also a shout out to Julie B, who's been instrumental in helping push it and work the label. Tell us about the journey with them. Excuse the pun.
God. So I actually wrote that track in lockdown, and again, it is one that I did. I thought, that's nice. That'll just stay in a folder. And for some reason, me and Todd kind of hit it off on a personal level. And in a spur of the moment thing, I just decided to send it to him. And he liked it so much. His reply back was, I'm going to restart my label purely so I can release this track. the length of time that took was quite considerable. And as you said, Julie B was the real driving force behind actually getting that to happen in the end. And I'm so pleased to see that Todd now is actually back in and producing stuff himself and releasing stuff on that label. So that couldn't have worked out better. If it's seems to have inspired him to get back in and do stuff and roll with it again. So that pleases me no end. I have got a follow up, which I wrote around the same time, which he has heard. In fact, I need to speak to Julie and Todd and work out a plan for when that's going to be available.
Okay, great. Well, we look forward to that, and I'll be giving it a spin. Where are we? August. Is it done? Is it finished now? Did you just say?
Yeah, the music elements are finished. I think it's mixed well. So yeah, maybe just needs a master.
Okay, so it'll be ready for September.
You know how it works, Andy.
Well, we'll all be playing it whether it's ready or not, anyway. Okay, so I feel we've raced through this conversation. I feel there's so much that we haven't spoken about, and you're going to kick yourself after and think, I can't believe I didn't speak about that. I can't believe I didn't mention that.
What about a certain little lady downstairs?
Well, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows now. Andrea. She's now here, and we're now full-time cohabiting, and yeah, amazing. Who would have thought that? So again, going back to Vocal Booth, me and Andrea have known each other for a good 6 or 7 years, and always got on as people. We're always around each other, but never once throughout those years did we ever think that it would end up to being a relationship and living together and stuff.
Well, it's
look at the smile on my face.
I know, you can see, you can feel it. Well, the thing that I love about this story as well is the fact that I remember the first time that I spoke to Andrea. She had been talking to someone about coming to Vocal Booth, and the person that she was talking to was bad-mouthing Vocal Booth, saying about, you're not going to like it. Yeah. You're not going to like it. The people are horrible, way too cliquey. And I think Andrew had made a comment to those, to that extent on Facebook. And I said, listen, you're going to be fine. She's coming on her own. I actually went and picked her up from the airport and just made sure everything was fine, settled her in. And then she's been one of our biggest supporters, one of our biggest cheerleaders. And then to see you guys get together, it's really great.
And man, her music. Wow. I had no idea of the depth of knowledge and musical taste that woman's got. There's not a week goes by where she doesn't turn me on to something really amazing.
Well, she's actually just said in the chat, he steals all my music.
You know what? She's not far wrong there. She's turned me on to a lot of great music, and not just house music, soul and stuff as well. Yeah, brilliant. Perfect.
Beautiful. So is this an official announcement of now that you're? Some people know.
I think most people know. We've been together for just over a year now, so yeah. I have no qualms and nothing to hide. Obviously, for sensitive reasons, we had to sort of play it down somewhat in the early days until we knew what it was.
Well, I'm fully aware, because there will be some people who who know your story, but there will also be a lot of people who won't be fully aware of the full story, and I get the feeling it's not something that we really want to revisit in this conversation. What I will say is myself and Amanda, Steve's wife, had a lengthy conversation when she was ill a few years ago, and if you want to hear that, then it is available. If you search for Andy Ward, Amanda Reed, and then all of the pieces will be put together. Now this is a new chapter for Steve, and you're in a very happy place, and you're comfortable with that, and all of the family and all everyone is behind you 100%.
I'm 100% comfortable with it. Still wake up some morning surprised at how quickly things have happened, but not necessarily in a negative way. I'm where I'm at for a reason,
Hmm.
and
Exactly.
truly grateful and blessed to be where I am right now.
Mhm. Okay, so you mentioned about a few years ago how busy you did become after coming out of lockdown, I guess, and then things have slowed down for you. Would you say that that's your own fault, for want of a better word, for taking your eye off the ball, or are you happy
Well,
with the way
you know
things
what?
are?
I've never pushed myself for. I'm very, very uncomfortable asking for gigs. I never know how to approach it, so it's something I've never done. Um, my busiest periods have always been when I've been involved in something else that's got people's attention. I mean, my DJing went through the roof when we were doing Brighter Days. We got offered um, to host an entire stage at the first We Out Here festival. That was off the back of Brighter Days. When I was DJing a lot in the 2000s, it was because of my connections in New York, and the record shop, and Grand Central. Um, Maybe I need an agent. Most people that I speak to that have got an agent say, it's not worth it. But I'm just not comfortable asking for gigs. So, if I have 6 months where I don't get any work, that is on me because I don't ask.
Mhm. And yet, at the same time, you aren't a full-time DJ. You've never really been a full-time DJ.
No,
You've always
I've
had,
never survived on it for a living.
you've
Right.
always held a full-time job.
Yeah, that would frighten the hell out.
Give me 30 seconds of what your day-to-day job is.
So I am a trainer for desk side support agents for a very, very large global company. But I train right across the globe. So I'll be speaking to people in Poland, Egypt, Russia, America, Puerto Rico, France, Germany. But
Into outer.
it's not. It's not. Weirdly enough, it's not actually that IT related anymore. It's mostly around the processes that the company want you to follow. Because I've been with the same company for 16 years, so I know the processes very well. So just making sure that people understand and follow how they want things to. Technical side went out of it a long, long time ago.
Okay, so it's not a physically daunting job. So you would be able to, if you were to increase your DJing load, you could quite comfortably manage it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I don't work weekends. I don't work bank holidays. I'm
So
starting.
off the back of your recent 5-hour stint in Birmingham at the wonderful Vocal Booth reunion, and you were getting heaped with praises from the management there, I'm sure they'll definitely be having you back. I mean,
I'd
BB.
love to. So do a great venue, and yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, he seemed very happy. I gave him a card. He's got my details.
Definitely. So and there's a lot of people who relate to that. You've got to go out and push yourself if it's what you really want, and yet at the same time, if you're happy where you are. So production, DJing, going out clubbing. You just said about you need to start slowing down a little bit. Is that sometimes you push it a little bit too much?
Where drinking and stuff is concerned, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where going out is concerned, no, not so much. I've still got energy for that. Do I want to be out every single weekend and touring internationally? Probably not. But would I like more than I've got currently? Yeah, if it's the right sort of gig,
Mm-hmm.
of course.
That's the important thing, and there are a great deal of really good gigs out and about now. If someone with your musical taste, I'm sure you wouldn't have any difficulty. But I think take on the responsibility yourself rather than looking for an agent. Sometimes agents ain't worth the money that they're trying to take from you.
That's exactly the point I was trying to make. That tends to be the feedback that I get, and unless you're established at such a level anyway.
Yeah.
And then but the work's already there. Then it's really a case of them managing that work for you rather than trying to get you more gigs, right?
Mm-hmm. So life goals. I'll throw that on you. What's your life goals?
Move house, get my forever home with my partner, preferably somewhere with a nice big entertaining space, and carry on.
So you can not drink copious amounts every weekend.
Just somewhere I've got the decks and my records downstairs, really. And just like, just entertain at home a bit more. Still producing. I don't push myself. I don't stick to a schedule. I do it when the mood takes. But I'm working with Julian Bendel from Bar Samba and Shake the Dog at the moment. We've got 2 or 3 things in the pipeline. All a bit crazy and all a bit mad.
You don't say.
But interesting, fun. Again, a great creative outlet for me. Will any of them ever come out or see the light of day in any way, shape, or form? Who knows? First track's complete. Sent it to 2 or 3 people. They weren't interested, so that's shelved for the time being. And we're on to the next couple.
Okay. And then in the meantime, every week you're on the radio, the Revolve radio show on Pressure. A labour of love, right? Most definitely.
It is. And you know what? I used to do a Wednesday night in lockdown, which suited me fine. And I was persuaded to move to the Sunday slot. And I knew in my heart of hearts that was going to cause issues when I'm away most weekends, and getting back for it can be extremely difficult. Over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been thinking a lot about this and whether I can give it 100% and commit to it fully with that, with me being away so much. And again, if my DJ work does increase at all, it's going to have an impact on that show, which I love doing it, but sometimes it's just really difficult on that Sunday night time slot. But that's a different story. I've not made up my mind on it yet. I'm not saying I'm going to quit, but I think I've got to seriously think about, if it's a weekly show, is it fair on everybody to keep dropping out every other weekend or drop out for 2-3 weeks at a time? I don't know yet.
I hear you. Cool. 6 p.m. at the moment. 6 p.m. at the moment on a Sunday on Pressure Radio. So I'll say again, we've raced through this conversation. I thought we were going to be here talking about lots. Do you feel like you've skipped over a lot because you don't really want to be chatting too much, or?
I'm quite happy to talk, but as I said before we started, piecing things together in a sensible timeline and putting dates and years on stuff is becoming more and more difficult for me. We've probably skipped over a lot of stuff, but at the same time, nothing particular is springing to mind.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So I will say then, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Slightly early than usual because it is a ridiculously hot afternoon here in Spain. So I wanted to do it early so we can get it finished and I can get some tea inside me. We've had a lot of the Pressure crew here watching, a lot of the Vocal Booth family, of course, watching. And there will be people who aren't necessarily familiar with your own story that much who can dig a little deeper and find out a little bit more about you. So your socials, tell us where people can find you on your socials.
Facebook, Steve Reed, or I have a Blackwax page. I'm on Instagram as well, Blackwax. Blackwax.net is my website. Can't forget that one. Some weirdo made it for me a few years ago.
Still going strong, though. Still going strong.
Actually, I need to speak to you about that. I can't upload to it at the minute.
Okay.
I haven't got a Twitter account.
You don't need one.
No, I don't need one. And I'm on Threads.
Okay, I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
I totally forgot all about that.
It's just exactly the same as all the rest of the stuff, mate.
Okay. Well, listen.
I post media quite a lot. I post quite a lot. It's normally food pictures or pictures of tomatoes I've just picked out of the garden.
And keep them coming. Keep them coming. All right, dude. Listen, I'm going to say a few words.
Before we go.
Yes, sir.
August 27th, Bank Holiday weekend, Bump and Hustle in Bournemouth. I'll be there. Hill Street Soul Live. Groove Assassin in the house room. And September the 16th, a week before I go to Vocal Booth in Spain, I'm playing at Soul on the Canal side for the Mucho Soul Boys, alongside Harv Nagy and Dean Sunshine Smith.
Wonderful.
Hit me up for more details.
Nice little plug there. And then a couple of days before heading out to Spain, I actually don't have any idea what slot you're doing yet, but I'm going to be looking at that. You're going to be going to quite an important concert as well, right?
Oh, yes, Ken. Oh.
Where is that? It's not a jazz cafe, is it?
Jazz cafe.
Oh, it is.
What a great venue to see him in. Oof.
But first time you've seen him?
Oh, live, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There'll be a few.
I've got goosebumps thinking about that one.
I was going to say, you'll wet your knickers, right? You that night.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say 2 a.m. in the club, but the club's not really the club anymore, is it? No. 12 o'clock Saturday morning poolside then.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we'll get that sorted. We'll talk about that. Okay, right. I'm gonna say goodbye to everyone. Thank you, mate.
No, thank you.
I'll say towards the end of the conversation again how much I love and respect you and what a fantastic DJ and person you are. All right. See you later, dude. Okay, and there goes Steve. Where am I? Am I still working? I've confused myself. I've had a little bit of a change around in the studio today, and I cannot see myself. What's going on? Why can't I see myself? Oh, there I am. Yes, had a change around in the studio. There's a slight different angle. I'm going to upload some photos when I've got everything done. Thank you for being here, everybody. Throughout August, I had actually intended of not going live, and yet I can't not talk to my friends, and I can't not have these wonderful conversations. So I'm not actually sure who's going to be with me next week. If you have any suggestions who you would like me to talk to, or if you yourself would like to join me on the program, then feel free to hit me up. As always, I'm fairly certain everyone that's with me live is already subscribed to the channel. But if you aren't, then please do hit that subscribe button. It does help me a lot. And if you like the video, it will allow me to get seen by a lot more people. You can see all of the people who have recently subscribed here, all of the Access crew floating up the right-hand side of the screen. And of course, my cheeky little plug for Ward's websites. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much to all of the Pressure and Vocal Booth family. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. One love.